Um, the man whispered, "God, speak to me." And a meadowlark sang, but the man did not hear. So the man yelled, "God, speak to me." And the thunder rolled across the sky, but the man did not listen. The man looked around and said, "God, let me see." And a star shone brightly, but the man did not notice. The man shouted, "God, show me a miracle." And a life was born, but the man did not know. So the man cried out in despair, "Touch me, God, and let me know that you are here." Whereupon God reached down and touched the man. But the man brushed the butterfly away and walked on. Don't miss out on a blessing because it isn't packaged the way that you expect it to be. Now, if you took a shot in the dark and guessed how many times you were blessed this week by God, how many times would you think? 10 blessings? 20 blessings? 50? Or how about 1,000? How many times do you think God blesses you in a week? I think we could never find the number of times that God blesses us in a week. We would never know. One blessing from God is uncountable, if that's a word. If God blesses you with something, it's really not something we should count. We should just accept the blessing. Now let's look at it a little differently, what I'm actually wanting to get at today. How many blessings did you see this week? How many blessings did you take the time to recognize? We will never see every blessing that God gives us. So many of God's blessings are done out of our sight. We don't even know they happen. God takes care of things for us that we will never know about this side of heaven. And I don't even know, even in heaven, we might not even care. We might not even look into the amount of blessings that God has given to us. Maybe it's just something we'll just automatically know. I don't know. Have you ever found money on the ground or even in your own pants pocket, reached in, and there's money in there? But if you find money on the ground or whatever, how do you know it wasn't placed there on purpose by someone that was hoping that you would find it? That's how God works sometimes. He places things in front of us just hoping that we'll find it. But if we don't recognize it, we don't see that God even gave us anything. Finding money is always seen as a blessing, or at least I would hope that we would see it as a blessing. But there are plenty of things that happen that we don't see as blessings, but it really is. Sometimes our instant reaction to something is to get mad. You've been in an accident, or you see someone in an accident. I hope none of you have been in an accident, but when you're in an accident, someone bumps into you, rear ends you, whatever, our instant reaction is we get mad. We get mad because someone ran into our car. Someone damaged our car. We don't think, or sometimes we do, sometimes we even say, well, at least I'm alive. But then that goes away immediately and you're back to being mad about somebody running into your car. We can sometimes recognize a blessing, but then we go right back to being mad about something else. Years ago, this is a story about me, but years ago, I think Amber and I knew each other then. We weren't married yet, but anyhow, it doesn't matter. I was on my way home from work. It was around midnight. Bless you, Bill. I was on my way home, and I don't know how many of you around pellet guns or any kind of rifle too much that you know the sound of a rifle going off. You can tell even by how loud or the sound of the rifle or even the ammunition you're using. They all make different sounds, and you kind of, if you're around them enough, you kind of get to know different rifles or shotgun or what kind of ammo they're using or a pellet gun. Well, I heard the shot of a pellet gun out my window, and almost immediately I felt something go through my hair, went right through my hair, and I heard it ricochet off the back of my seat, and it hit the window on the other side of my truck. That pellet gun could have hit me in the eye or anywhere. Pellet guns have different strengths too, so it might have just ricocheted off of me or whatever. Didn't break my window, didn't harm my truck or anything, but little blessings like that, you kind of get mad sometimes. Somebody shot at me. You know, that could have hurt me. We need to recognize those things as nothing happened. I was blessed. God saved my eye. God saved me in a way that, who knows what could have. I could have swerved and, hit a car and rolled. We could carry that on but we just need to realize God blessed me. God blessed me in a way that I will never know, and I just got to go on home and go to bed. There's so many things that God can do out of a little situation like that we will never know. He took care of me in a way that I will never know. As you probably figured out by now, my message is about blessings. Actually, I want to discuss how often we don't notice our blessings. How often do we not notice our blessings? There are some really grumpy people in this world. If they would stop looking at what they see as bad in their life and start looking for blessings, they might not be so grumpy. Sometimes I think people enjoy being grumpy. It's just who they are, it's their lifestyle, they enjoy it. My professor said this week that people should fail at life quietly. If you're going to fail at life, do it quietly. If you want to be a grumpy person, do it quietly and let the rest of us enjoy our life. It's okay if you want to be grumpy, just do it quietly. He had a whole story, but that doesn't go with my message. So, that's how it is, isn't it? As they say, as the saying goes, misery loves company. Those who are miserable are not quiet about it, sometimes so much that they make others around them miserable. It seems that's their life's goal sometimes. When you're miserable, when you're a grumpy person, you kind of carry it on. People who are joyful are the same way, really. They walk through life joyful. Sometimes it's a little irritating. You're like, you don't have to smile all the time, do you? But it's the same way with grumpy people. It's like, not every day is a bad day, is it? My professor was actually talking about the Jewish people that Paul was dealing with in Romans. The ones that were persistent on following the law. People get so carried away sometimes with things being the way that they want them that they walk around grumpy all the time. So imagine that's how the Jewish people were. Probably walk around grumpy all the time. Oh, look, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Look what they just did. Walking around grumpy all the time, pointing fingers at what everybody's doing wrong. Being grumpy doesn't get you anywhere with people. That is such a simple thing to understand. If you deal with people with a grumpy attitude, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's easy to understand, but the Jews were still behaving that way. They wasn't getting anywhere as far as what they wanted. They were just constantly pointing out what people were doing wrong. If you treat people poorly, they won't want to work with you or talk with you or anything else with you. The purpose of the law was and is to teach. That's what the law was for. It was to teach. Following the law was never meant to save you. Doing all the things that the Jewish people wanted you to do at that time was never meant to save you. Jesus is our Savior. Jesus is meant to save us. Jesus saves, not the law. Your way, the way that we want to conduct things, the way our laws that we make does not save you. People like to say, it's my way or the highway. But that is not how we as Christians should act. We need to be showing others that Jesus is the only way that matters. Now, I've heard a couple different pastors say this. Do you know the worst crowd that restaurants, they don't like Sunday afternoon people, the Sunday afternoon crowd. A waitress does not want to have to work on Sunday afternoon. Tips are lower, and the attitude of the people are worse. They don't like this. The Sunday afternoon crowd are the Christians. You would think anyways, and that's the crowd that a waitress will try to trade away. If they're scheduled for Sunday, they'll try to trade it off. I don't want to work Sunday. It should be, I don't get to work Sunday this week. It should be, Sundays are when I get my best tips. Or Sundays are the nicest people. I want to work on Sunday. No, they don't want to. Back to my message here. Now still, without the law or the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments are rules that we are to follow. Without the law or without the Ten Commandments, we could have a misbehaving society. We follow laws and we follow the commandments because we have to have a set of rules to live by. Now, that's common sense. You kind of have to have rules to live by. The Jewish people followed their laws and traditions to the T. You did it perfectly. It was very frowned upon to not follow the law. If you didn't follow the law, you were going to hell. It was the law. It wasn't religious, anything that God really. It wasn't following Jesus, it was following the law. That's how they preached it anyways. If you didn't follow their law, you were going to hell. Something else my professor says a lot is that if something is done for too long in a church, it becomes law. This is what we are taught a lot. He says this over and over and over again. What he means by that is that little things will happen in a church. I just use the example of the light on the cross. Say we started leaving it on all the time, or say we never had it on, and someone wanted to turn it on or turn it off, whatever, and we're like, no, we don't do it that way. People tend to get mad. We've been in churches where the flags are an issue. We've never had the flags in our church. Why do you want to bring them in now? Or we've always had the flags in the church. Why do you want to take them out now? That has nothing to do with Jesus. None of that has anything to do with Jesus. After you do things for a certain amount of time, it becomes law in the church, and that's how you do it. If you try to take that away, well, you're going against God. It's a light on the cross. It has nothing to do with Jesus, but we make things law in our church. That's what the Jewish people did. They did something for years that was really never written as law, but it was done for years, and it was now the law. But it was merely a tradition. That's all it was. Tradition becomes law. You can't condemn someone over tradition, meaning you can't get grumpy with someone because you have a different tradition. Because this church is different than that church by tradition, not by what Jesus says. We're different than a lot of other churches just because of tradition, not by the Bible. The Jewish people had the biggest blessing in the history of blessings, and they didn't even recognize him because he didn't follow their laws. Jesus was seen as a sinner because he didn't follow traditional law. That is what being grumpy will do to you. People don't always have to do things your way, but we do have to do things God's way. They didn't want to do things God's way, so they missed out on the biggest blessing that ever was. My professor gives the Jewish people a lot of credit in their way of following the law to the T. They followed their law to the T. It may have been wrong, but he says it's something we as Christians could do a better job at. We could do a little better at this. We need to follow God's word to the T. If the Jewish people can follow their made-up laws, their traditions to the T, why can't we follow the Bible to the T? He says, over and over again, we need to do a better job of following the Bible the way the Jewish people followed their traditions. Now I want to read Proverbs 16:20. Whoever gives heed to instruction prospers, and blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. Whoever gives heed to instruction prospers. Gives heed to who? To me, the pastor? No. Gives heed to the law? No. That's not what Paul's talking about, or what Proverbs is talking about here. This is where it can get a little tricky. There are laws we have to follow, like the speed limit. I suppose we could say that we don't want to follow the speed limit. We don't want to have to follow the law, because the law makes us grumpy. Having to go too slow or too fast, or that makes me grumpy. I don't want to have to do it the way you say I have to do it. I want to do it my way. Now try telling that to the cop when he pulls you over for speeding. We can get grumpy because we don't want to have to follow the law, but sometimes we have to. There are laws set by our lawmakers that we have to follow. Following these laws is listening to instruction from God. And when we trust in God's instructions, we will be blessed. When you follow the law, you will be blessed. Why? Well, let's look and see what Romans 13:1 and 2 say. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authority that exists have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. God says to do what we're told as far as our governing authorities. This brings us back to Proverbs 16:20. We follow the governing authorities because we trust in the Lord. Just trust in the Lord and everything else will work out. Now, we all get mad at the government sometimes. We've talked about that before. I preached on that before. The government does things that makes us mad. We all get grumpy over how things are done. But we trust in the Lord because the authorities that exist have been established by God. Now, I have an example about this. My professor says that whether you let God use you or not, He will use you. Whether you're giving in to Him or not, if He needs to use you for something, He will use you for that. Take Pharaoh, for example. God did a great work through Moses in getting His people out of Egypt. God could have sent an army of angels to defeat Pharaoh. None of the droughts or anything like that, none of the things that Moses did needed to happen. God could have just sent an army and said, my people are out of here. That's all that needed to happen, but God does things in His way for a specific reason. Let me read Exodus 12:31. During the night, Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron and said, "Up, lead my people. You and the Israelites go, worship the Lord as you have requested." God didn't need Pharaoh's permission, but He still used Pharaoh to set His people free. God didn't need to have Pharaoh say those words, but He used Pharaoh in this way. He was fighting God the entire way. God still used him. God doesn't need our governing authorities to believe in Him either. Pharaoh didn't believe in God. And sometimes our governing authorities, they don't believe in God either. But God doesn't need them to believe in Him. God can accomplish whatever He wants without their permission. And the same goes for all of us as well. God can use us whether we let Him or not. And He will still accomplish His goal, whether we give in to Him or not. God doesn't need us to get done what He wants to get done. He doesn't need our grumpy attitudes, our need to have everything done according to our traditions. God doesn't need any of that. He gives us the privilege to be a part of something. He doesn't need us, but we get the privilege. It's a privilege for him to use you in some way. All we have to do is be a part of the blessing of watching someone come to know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. Just do your part and keep your eyes open to watch. And that's what we get to see. We get to see someone recognize Jesus as their Lord and Savior. Luke 6:45. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. What comes out of your mouth? Is it good things you have stored up in your heart, or is it evil things? God can be seen in your life every single day. Whether you allow God to affect you in a positive way or not is up to you. Will God use you like he used Pharaoh, or will you be willing to give in to the blessing of being used by God? God blesses us so many times in one day. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but I tell my kids all the time to be on the lookout for blessings. A blessing can brighten your day. If you're looking for a blessing more than you're looking for something that will make you grumpy, your life will improve just by looking for what God is doing for you. It's a shame that even as Christians we have to look for God in our lives, but it's true, we have to look. How many grumpy Christians do you know? If we could see God in our lives daily, we wouldn't be that grumpy now, would we? If you were paying more attention to what God is doing good in your life than the things that you don't like, your life would improve. You wouldn't be as grumpy. We live in a world of sin. It's everywhere. So I'm not saying every circumstance we find ourselves in is our fault. Things that go bad aren't always your fault. What is our fault is not at least looking for the blessings in our life. That's where you can fail, by at least not looking for God in your life. We can so easily find something to be grumpy about and complain about, but we struggle to find something to be blessed about. Are we looking in the wrong places? Now let me finish with where I began. The man whispered, "God, speak to me," and a meadowlark sang. But the man did not hear. We really need to listen for that. My dad talks about, I think he was talking to Carol a little bit ago, his ears are, he's got like infection behind, he's got bad ears anyways, but he's got like an infection behind them. And his hearing aids, he's been turning them up and turning them down. The infection has been affecting his hearing, and so he can't hear, so he'll turn them up, and then the infection shifts or does whatever, and things get loud, so he turns them down. So in the mornings, he's been just leaving them out, not even putting them in. And he'll go outside, and he told us the last time we was visiting him, he's like, "I heard a bird without my hearing aids." So excited. He's like, "I heard a bird." And I thought, well, you can hear birds every day, but then he said, "without my hearing aids." And I thought, oh, good. You know, and then he said something yesterday that he heard. I don't remember. Cricket. He was outside and he heard a cricket without his hearing aids. And he's so happy about that. That's what looking for a blessing is. So the man yelled, "God, speak to me." And the thunder rolled across the sky. But the man did not listen. You really have to not be listening when you say, "God, speak to me," and you hear thunder. You really have to not be paying attention. But people do that. Thunder can roll right after asking God to speak to you, and you don't notice. The man looked around and said, "God, let me see you." And a star shone brightly, but the man did not notice. There are stars everywhere, and so you might think, well, of course he didn't notice one star. But there are stars everywhere. Holding one star up in the sky so that it didn't come down and hurt us would be no easy. Holding millions and billions of stars at bay. holding them all back so they don't come and hurt us. They could just come flying at us. God holds everything in position, holds everything in position so that we can live here in peace. And the man shouted, God, show me a miracle. And the life was born, but the man did not know. Babies are born daily, and we don't recognize it really as a blessing from God. How precious and how hard it is to just to form something inside of a woman and have it come out. That is, how can you not notice God in that? So the man cried out in despair, touch me, God, and let me know you are here. Whereupon God reached down and touched the man, but the man brushed the butterfly away and walked on. Butterflies don't land on people every day. If you're praying for God to touch you and a butterfly would happen to come and land on you, and you don't notice that, you need more help than I can preach in a message. Don't miss out on blessings because it isn't packaged the way that you expect. As I was going over this message, I read that to Amber, and she said it's like the guy in the boat during the flood. Now, I'm sure you guys have all heard this, but it fits very well. The floods came, and the guy had to go to the roof of his house, and a boat came by, and the guy said, no, they were like, come on. He's like, no. He said, I'm waiting for God to do a miracle for me, and the boat goes on. I don't know if I'm telling this exactly right, but then another boat comes by, and they're like, the floods are right at the top of your house. You need to go. He's like, no, I'm waiting for God to perform a miracle. And then a helicopter comes by. He's standing on the roof of his house. This is his last chance. A helicopter comes by, and he's like, no, I'm waiting for God to perform a miracle. And the guy drowns. He goes to heaven, and he's like, God, you never performed a miracle. Like I said, you had two boats and a helicopter. You got to learn to recognize what God is doing for you, not just wait for it to come in your way. An angel's not going to come down and pluck you off your rooftop. An angel can be in the form of a boat or a helicopter. Learn to recognize what God is doing for you. Now, as we sing this last song, please think about how many times you were grumpy about something this week. How many times, what all made you grumpy this week? And also think about how many times you actually paid attention to God's everyday blessings in your life. When did you hear a bird or see a butterfly or hear thunder? When did you hear a baby cry? Those are just everyday blessings that we take for granted. Think of, as we sing this last song, just think of how many blessings that you heard or saw this week that you just kind of let fly by.